So let's look at 4 key facilitator skills. As I stated earlier, approach is both the most challenging facilitator characteristic to refine and the most critical for managing the group process. Developing an effective approach that works with a variety of groups requires an awareness of and experience in group facilitation. 4 main skills make up the art of facilitation: engaging, observing, listening, and questioning. So this is the chance for you to evaluate yourself. We're going to talk about each of these skills in the next few slides. And so as I do, think about your own style. Think about your relative degree of current expertise in each of these 4 areas. I'm going to place a special emphasis on the use of effective questioning. Peter Senge convinced me there's more power in a good question than in any answer. The best facilitators ask more questions than they make statements. The best team leaders ask more questions at work than they make statements at work. During your practice session, you'll have the chance to begin using these skills, but you can begin learning about them as you watch the facilitator of this workshop. So if I'm teaching it, you can watch me, even though you can't see me. I'm trying to engage you with my voice, but more importantly, I hope you're using this to practice internally and to get better internally. And we all need to get better as facilitators, so don't be afraid to practice in front of each other. Many more people fill the role of facilitator in this world than are masters at the skill. So that's a key thing to think about. You're going to have to do this, so you might want to learn to get good at it. Facilitation is similar to leadership in the sense that you can have formal control of the group and still not be in charge. Good facilitators can help groups accomplish difficult and exceptional things. They're like the conductor of a symphony orchestra. Good facilitators realize that they're not there to talk the whole time. They realize that their primary role is to help everyone in the group truly learn about what is being presented. They are self-aware enough to know how they're being perceived by the group, and they're willing to make adjustments if a certain approach is not working. At the same time as they're looking at themselves, they're also scanning the group to notice who is involved and who isn't, who's engaged, who's not. They also know that the self-esteem of each team member in the room has to be maintained, or each team member on the screen has to be maintained, and that it's their role as facilitator to help ensure that this happens. Engaging. Engaging relates to how you present yourself to and connect with the group. So the old school teachers that simply lecture, they are not engaging. It's up to you to stay engaged as a student. Effective engagement, however, allows you to send a positive message about yourself to the audience on an ongoing basis. You can show them that you're interested in them, you're interested in what you're teaching, and you're interested in their improvement efforts. As you build rapport with a group, you can also enable yourself to observe more effectively. Try to practice consistently using 4 main engaging behaviors. Try to face the group at all times. This is not always possible, but the more you do it, the better chance you have of sending a positive message on a regular basis. Adhering to this rule is the most challenging when you're writing information on a whiteboard or a flip chart. The worst thing you can do is read off of the PowerPoint slides on the wall and turn your back to the group. Number 2, maintain appropriate eye contact with the team members, so you're not just facing the group and staring at their chests, staring at the tables in front of them, staring at the windows behind them. You're trying to make appropriate eye contact with the team members. You're scanning from person to person. You don't want to make someone feel uncomfortable because you're staring them down. Eye contact both indicates interests and allows you to observe more consistently. You can tell if you're boring by looking at their eyes. Move towards the group from time to time. Don't just stand in one place like a statue. You will appear to be less standoffish if you do this. Don't stay fixed behind a podium. That's the worst thing you can do, because then your group's going to seek out something more interesting in the room to pay attention to besides you. And in these days, something more interesting on a screen to pay attention to besides you. Finally, you want to find and eliminate distracting behaviors. At first, you may unconsciously display behaviors such as jingling the change in your pocket, or swaying side to side, or saying the word really too many times in a minute. As you gain facilitator experience, you'll become aware of these and other distracting behaviors that you may have. One common one with speakers, and I know the one that shocked me into Toastmasters, so to speak, was using non-words such as and I did not realize how much I did that until I listened to a recording of myself. It was the first recording of a presentation I'd ever listened to, and I was so appalled at how many non-words I heard. I was never able to listen to it more than once. But I also got better as a result of that. We want to eliminate these distracting behaviors over time. Observing. Observing concerns how you regularly scan the group to evaluate your effectiveness in, first of all, managing the group process, and two, engaging the group. So are we keeping the group headed down the path, and are we keeping them involved as we're going down the path? Observing your audience as you work with them may sound easy, but it's more difficult than most think. Because you've got to think about multiple things. You've got to think about what are they going to say next or ask next? What are they seeing in terms of group feedback? And what adjustments does the group need to make? Many trainers and facilitators simply stare at the back of the room and talk their topic. They don't worry about engaging the group. If the folks want to drift, they let them drift. That's not a good facilitator. If they don't want to participate, they let them sit there like a rock. That's not a good facilitator. Looking your audience in the eye forces you to receive feedback, and that encourages you to act. As you observe your team members, you should be looking for 4 feelings: confusion, boredom, understanding, and enthusiasm. If you want to have some fun, you could say, let's all model these 4 different feelings. What does a person look like when they're confused? What does a person look like when they're bored? What does a person look like when they're understanding you? And then what does a person look like when they're enthused? In most cases, all 4 will be being displayed simultaneously unless you've only got 3 in the room, and hey, it still could happen. And you're going to need to start sorting out what's the feeling the majority of the group is expressing. Don't let one person's reaction to your topic or approach dictate a change in approach for the whole group. Make a mental note of what you observe. Keep tabs as you go, but don't react. Don't overreact. Notice body posture, facial expressions, and body movements, or lack of them. What's missing is sometimes more important than what's there. Remember that no one behavior is an absolute indicator that a person feels a certain way. They just might like to sit there with their arms crossed. If their eyes are closed, they may be deeply thinking about what you're saying, and that's how they stay focused. They may not be asleep. At least I keep telling myself that. Some people just like to sit there that way. In those cases where a majority of the group is exhibiting a negative behavior, they're all on their screens, no one's looking at you, no one's paying attention, you must decide if the cause is the topic, your approach, both factors, or something totally unrelated to you, like some earth-breaking news just happened and they're all looking at that on their computers. If you're the cause, which is usually the case, take action. Continue to observe as you work with the group to see if the desired behavior changes are taking place. Are they becoming more enthused? Are they becoming more engaged? Are they becoming less confused? And are they showing more understanding? Listening. Observing is not just visual. In actuality, listening is a component of observing. Because effective listening is so critical to facilitator success, however, it's treated as a skill by itself. Facilitative listening involves listening to the responses that people are giving to your questions and to the questions that they ask you. You're listening to the words, you're listening to pace, you're listening to tone of voice. The positive feelings of understanding and enthusiasm, along with the negative feelings of boredom and confusion, are often conveyed by the team through their questions, comments, and observations. By showing one or more members of the group that you are listening to them, that you heard them, that you remembered what they said from 10 minutes ago, you can communicate an understanding of their concerns and interests, and you can't fake this. You have to want to do this. Rephrasing their comments can be helpful in this regard, but you have to do this tactfully because you don't want to look like a parrot. You don't want to use a mimicking style. Use their comments as examples or bring up a comment that someone made in the previous half hour or hour as examples of clarification later in the class. That's a super way of showing that you're paying attention. Using the participants' input in this way also helps build their confidence, and it helps maintain and increase their future participation and the participation of others. Listening is not the same as hearing. Listening involves understanding as well. Remember Covey, seek first to understand. Try to hear the feelings and concerns that are being expressed behind the words. If you listen with the intent to reply, you will shut down your audience. If you listen with the intent to understand, however, they will open up and contribute even more. Take a breath. Take 2 breaths. Pause for the cause. When a team member is communicating to you, you should make every effort to give them your undivided attention. Try avoid handling paperwork, your phone, playing with the computer, making other adjustments up at the front of the room when someone is talking to you. Even if you feel that you can do both at the same time, they don't know that. Their perception of you is the one of the customers, and that's the perception that counts. Questioning. It would be easy to assume that listening was the key tool of a facilitator, but actually the use of effective questioning takes that title if you have seen good facilitators, because that's how you truly engage and draw out the group and their creative ideas. Questions provide your link to the event participants, and the effective use of questions facilitates the observing and listening skills that have just been covered. Questions help you find out what is known already. They invite participation and involvement, and they help you obtain group feedback. Most importantly, they encourage each team member to think for themselves. When you ask a question, each participant's mind automatically returns some type of answer, even if they don't verbally state it, and this is so key to know. When you ask a question, their mind returns an answer, even if they don't verbally state it. Questions are powerful. You will use 3 main types of questioning skills on a seemingly ongoing basis as you facilitate a meeting or training session if you want to be a good facilitator. You can count the number of questions in a meeting or a training session to almost do a quick assessment of facilitator skill. Primarily, you're going to be asking questions of your event participants, but you'll also be handling their questions, and you're going to be handling their answers to your questions. Okay? As questions are asked, you have to consider how they're phrased, who they should be directed to, and whether or not they're even appropriate. You don't have to always answer the questions yourselves. And these relate to any type of question, regardless of the source. The way in which a question is phrased will determine how it's answered and the effect it will have on a group. Questions are powerful. You don't have to be Mr. or Ms. Know-It-All. If you feel that someone else in the room probably knows the right response, give them the chance to contribute by calling on them for their ideas. Doing so will build their self-esteem. They may express the answer in their own terms better than you could have. If the question is beyond the scope of the group, or if you aren't sure of the answer, postpone it until it can be properly dealt with. It's okay to admit you don't know. The case may also be that time doesn't allow for a complete response, or that the topic will be coming up later in the session. In all of these cases, don't put someone off, don't blindside someone, and don't forget to respond later. That could really impact your credibility. Remember, there's more power in a good question than in any answer. That brings us to the end of Lesson 4. And what you're going to find at the end of Lesson 4 is one of these individual versus group team building exercises. And this is a very vintage exercise from back in the day, and you'll be able to tell that as you read through the exercise. It's called the fallout shelter exercise. And so it's one of these exercises where you work through it as an individual, and then you work through it as a team. And I hate to tell you this, folks, but there's no right answers to this. The point of this exercise is to explore the assumptions we each used and made as we made the choice of who to keep in the fallout shelter and who to leave outside. It's been a treat teaching you the basic skills of facilitation. I'll look forward to working with you more as we progress into Lesson 5.